Picture this, a Saturday morning in early 1960s Windsor. The air is thick with the scent of fresh bread. The butcher's door stands ajar, his knife already at work, slicing bacon for Mrs. Chambers, a weekly ritual he knows well. Outside, the greengrocer meticulously stacks apples, ready to offer his expert advice on the week's best. Inside the grocer's, a small queue forms, 4 or 5 women, baskets in hand, sharing conversation. The shop bell announces each arrival and departure. A young boy, nose pressed to the Woolworth's window, dreams of Christmas. His mother, just 2 doors down, collects the fish she ordered Tuesday, expertly wrapped and handed over with a smile. At the newsagent's, an old man's terrier, tethered to a railing, observes the street, a creature of Saturday habit, as familiar with the routine as anyone. This particular Saturday morning unfolds on a small high street in Windsor in the early 1960s. Here, the local economy thrived. 7 butchers, 7 greengrocers, and 9 grocers served the community. Among these were established names like Lipton's, Home and Colonial Stores, and David Gregg's. International stores offered a convenient service, an order placed on Tuesday, guaranteed delivery by Thursday. Behind each counter stood a familiar face, a shopkeeper who knew your name, your preferences, and even your children. The high street transcended mere commerce. It was a vibrant social nexus. For the elderly, it offered a reason to venture out. For children, a lesson in public conduct. For mothers, a chance to reconnect with neighbors they hadn't seen all week. Shopping was an event, meticulously planned, dressed for, and deeply engaging. It was an experience that left you feeling truly connected. At the street's apex stood the department store, an almost palatial presence. Here, on an ordinary Saturday, ordinary people could enjoy a cup of tea and a toasted tea cake, served with real cups and saucers by a waitress in a black dress. This small luxury held significant meaning. Your grandmother could spend an hour browsing fabrics, trying on hats, unhurried, with the entire day. Then there was Woolworth's, with its distinctive aroma, indefinable scent from the back. Its legendary pick-and-mix counter captivated every child. Rows of small compartments held chocolate limes, cola bottles, and sherbet lemons. Young faces pressed against the glass, mesmerized, until an adult gently guided them away. Further down the high street, the ironmonger's drawers held screws and nails, sorted precisely by size, each purchase carefully counted into a brown paper bag. The chemist's window glowed with colored bottles. The cobbler's workshop hummed with the whir of machinery, infused with the scent of leather and glue. These were places of familiarity. You knew the people, they knew you. Every Saturday, the town converged, walking the same paths, entering the same doors. This was the established rhythm of life. Yet, change was already underway. In 1950, Britain counted only around 50 supermarkets. By 1961, that number had surged to 572, and by 1969, just 5 years after resale price maintenance was abolished, the total reached 3,400. The retail landscape was shifting, but the high street still stood, remaining the undisputed heart of town life, a natural gathering place. This era, however, was drawing to a close. What followed was no accident. On March 2, 1976, in North London, Brent Cross Shopping Centre opened its doors. This was Britain's first American-style out-of-town indoor shopping centre. Its construction, a monumental undertaking, cost £20 million and required 19 years of planning and building. The Prince of Wales himself cut the ribbon. One journalist hailed it as a future characteristic concept. Another condemned it as hideous and soulless. Both assessments, it turned out, held truth. Brent Cross housed 75 shops under a single roof, offering air conditioning, late opening hours, and free parking. It provided everything the traditional high street offered, except the street itself, and the chance encounter with a neighbor outside the butcher's. What it delivered, instead, was unparalleled convenience, and that, it quickly became clear, was enough. The critical insight from that opening day was this: Brent Cross did not create 120,000 new shoppers. Rather, these were 120,000 journeys that would otherwise have been made to traditional town centers. From its very inception, this new model siphoned spending away from high streets. It generated no new economic growth, it simply relocated it. This shift moved commerce away from the butcher who knew your name, away from the greengrocer who advised on the best apples. The high street, built around walking, around local connection, around being an integral part of its town, had no effective counter. The shopping center, conversely, was built around the car. Once in a car, consumers could go anywhere. The high street could only be somewhere, and somewhere was no longer sufficient. But Brent Cross was merely the first crack in the foundation. What followed was a series of deliberate decisions made by those in government that systematically dismantled something centuries in the making. In 1979, a new government came to power, firmly convinced that the market alone should dictate such matters. Planning regulations, once considered community safeguards, were now viewed as impediments to business. Throughout the early 1980s, enterprise zones emerged in post-industrial regions. These areas offered relaxed planning regulations and a 10-year exemption from business rates. Intended to revitalize employment, they inadvertently became catalysts for new shopping centers. On October 29, 1980, Chancellor Geoffrey Howe formally approved the Dudley Enterprise Zone near Brierley Hill. Its stated purpose was to regenerate a section of the Black Country deeply scarred by the closure of the Round Oak Steelworks. A fresh start. What Hill, constructed between 1985 and 1990 within this enterprise zone, benefited from 10 years of free rates, no land taxes, and relaxed planning oversight. For major retailers, the financial incentives were undeniable. Why maintain a presence with full business rates on a traditional Dudley High Street when a mere 2 miles away, costs were virtually eliminated? This pattern was not isolated to Dudley. On April 28, 1986, the Metro Center opened in Gateshead, also on a former industrial site. Its financing came from the Church Commissioners of England, the very institution tasked with nurturing the spiritual well-being of England's communities, invested in a development that paradoxically contributed to their fragmentation. The irony was profound. The trend continued relentlessly. Meadowhall in Sheffield opened in September 1990, constructed on the former site of the Hadfield Steelworks. This nationwide transformation was underpinned by a seemingly innocuous document, Planning Policy Guidance Note 6, published in 1988. This guidance, largely unknown to the public, was intended to shape retail development, yet it fundamentally altered the landscape. Far from safeguarding town centers, PPG 6 instructed councils not to impede out-of-town retail schemes. Its explicit directive was that local authorities must not employ the planning system to inhibit competition. In essence, if a developer proposed a retail park on a greenfield site outside a town, the local council could not reject it solely because it threatened the existing high street. This single document effectively granted developers an unhindered path for almost a decade. Dudley's own planning officials issued stark warnings about the inevitable consequences. Local councils attempted to halt Maryhill's expansion, but their objections were consistently overruled. Those with the deepest understanding of their communities found their concerns dismissed. It was not until 1996, after a decade of profound disruption, that revised planning guidance finally introduced the sequential test, mandating developers to prioritize town center locations. By that point, nearly 1,000 superstores had already been approved. The damage was irreversible. Yet, the challenges continued to mount. In August 1994, the Sunday Trading Act took effect. Suddenly, large stores were permitted to open on Sundays. For independent shopkeepers, whose entire week revolved around 6 days of trade, this represented another devastating blow. One small retailer reported a 30% drop in Sunday business during the first year alone. While larger chains could absorb such losses, the family-run corner shop simply could not. Other nations had foreseen this trajectory. France and Germany, for instance, imposed far stricter limitations on out-of-town retail developments. Their town centers, as a result, remain demonstrably more vibrant today. Britain was not compelled to follow this path, yet it chose to. To truly grasp the profound cost of this decision, one need only examine Dudley. In 1984, Dudley Town Center pulsed with life. It boasted a substantial Marks & Spencer, a BHS directly across the road, Woolworths just a few doors away, and a 3-floor Littlewoods featuring a popular restaurant. There was Beatty's department store around the corner and Cook's department store crowning the high street. This was a proper town with a vibrant, proper center. Then, Maryhill arrived, just 2 miles distant, offering free business rates, ample free parking, and 10,000 spaces. The major retailers swiftly packed up and relocated. Marks & Spencer closed its Dudley store in August 1990. BHS soon followed, as did Sainsbury's and Littlewoods. One by one, these anchor shops departed. They didn't go bankrupt. They simply moved a short distance to a location that effectively charged them nothing. Within 5 years, an independent study plummeted by 70%. Imagine a frequented its streets. This catastrophic decline occurred in just half a decade. Alan Caswell, who had run the arcade toy shop in the Fountain Arcade for half a century, was forced to close one of his outlets and lay off 3 staff members within 2 years of Mary Hill's opening. His neighbor faced an even more dire fate. Laurie Fearness, proprietor of the Castle Sports Shop in the same arcade, watched his trade evaporate. He fell behind on his business rates, and bailiffs arrived to seize his stock. As he departed his shop for the final time, he painted a stark message on his windows. "I paid my rates for 30 years, and Dudley Council shut me down. Mary Hill paid no rates for 10 years. The once proud Marks & Spencer in Dudley eventually became a vendor of cheap lampshades and shop-soiled furniture. Littlewoods, a symbol of former vitality, became a row of clearance stores, largely empty. This, remarkably, was what the government then termed regeneration. Then, a moment arrived that resonated across the entire nation. On November 26, 2008, Woolworths, a cornerstone of British retail, entered administration. Swiftly, between December 27th and January 6th, all 807 stores closed their doors permanently. This catastrophic event led to 27,000 job losses, and every high street in Britain lost a familiar presence on that single day. For anyone over 50, Woolworths was ubiquitous. It was the pick and mix counter with its small plastic scoops, the record racks where Saturday afternoons were spent browsing albums, the source of cheap toys that filled Christmas stockings, the essential school stationery every September, and the photo booth by the door where friends would pull faces for 4 shots, costing just 50 pence. One could purchase dress patterns, saucepans, garden bulbs, and a birthday card all in a single visit. Woolies always seemed to have what was needed, even before one knew they needed it. Then, abruptly, all 807 locations vanished. The closing down sales in those final weeks were stark. Staff stood amidst increasingly empty shelves, acutely aware their employment was now measured in mere hours. Some stores even sold their fixtures, their shelving units, their till rolls. Everything was liquidated. Prime Minister Gordon Brown considered intervening to save Woolworths, but ultimately concluded it was beyond rescue. This same government, in the very same year, had committed to bailing out the nation's banks. The fate of 807 high street shops and 27,000 jobs, it seemed, was not deemed worthy of the same monumental effort. By August 2010, over 300 of those 807 former Woolworths stores remained empty, a staggering 40% sitting dark and derelict. The most common new occupants were discount retailers. Where the iconic pick-and-mix counter once stood, a Poundland now often occupied the space. Yet the high street's demise was not solely a consequence of broad policy and planning decisions. It was also systematically dismantled by specific individuals who profited immensely from its decline. In 2000, Philip Green acquired BHS. While the company still possessed substantial funds within its pension scheme, Green proceeded to extract hundreds of millions of pounds, leaving the business critically weakened, beyond any hope of repair. In 2015, he sold BHS for a symbolic £1 to Dominic Chappell, a man with 3 prior bankruptcies and no demonstrable experience in retail. The result? 11,000 jobs were lost, 20,000 people's pensions were jeopardized, and a pension deficit of $571 million purged. A parliamentary committee later condemned Green's conduct as the unacceptable face of capitalism. As BHS collapsed, photographs circulated of Green aboard his luxurious yacht. Parliament formally requested his contribution to the pension fund. He eventually paid £363 million. Despite the payment, the yacht remained. Green, however, was not an anomaly. He operated within the system's very design. By 2020, his Arcadia Group, encompassing iconic names like Topshop, Burton, and Dorothy Perkins, also collapsed. This closure meant 300 stores shuttered and 2,500 jobs vanished. Online retailers acquired the brand names, but not their physical presence. Debenhams, a retailer founded in 1778, had traded for 243 years. Yet, by May 2021, its last 124 stores closed. It had endured 2 administrations, a global pandemic, and a final sale to Boohoo for £55 million. Boohoo sought only the website, not the physical infrastructure, nor the 12,000 employees. A company older than the railways themselves simply ceased to exist. Underlying this transformation was Amazon, which launched in Britain in October 1998, initially selling books, then expanding to everything. By 2018, over 18 pence of every pound spent by British shoppers was transacted online. Amazon pays minimal business rates on its out-of-city warehouse spaces, while high-street stores bear the full burden of rates in town centers. The system, in essence, rewards the replacement of our traditional gathering places. In 2024 alone, over 12,800 chain stores closed across Britain, averaging approximately 35 per day. In certain northern towns, nearly 1 in 4 shop units now stand vacant. Since 2015, over 6,700 bank branches have disappeared, representing 68% of all branches from a decade prior. But beyond these statistics lies a deeper impact, the palpable emptiness where life once thrived. The high street was where diverse people, of all ages and backgrounds, converged on shared pavements. When that space empties, a vital element of town life dissipates with it, subtly at first, then irrevocably. Consider what the high street once demanded: the effort to dress, leave home, walk, converse, to simply be in public. The modern retail park, by contrast, requires only a car and a payment card. The butcher who knew your family's preferences, the greengrocer who reserved items for regulars, the shopkeeper who witnessed your children's growth, these individuals were the fabric of community life. Today, the elderly woman who once walked for her morning bread stays home. Teenagers, seeking their first Saturday job behind a counter, find no opportunities. The man who ran the shoe repair shop for 40 years has locked his doors for good. Walk down many British high streets today, and a familiar pattern emerges: a betting shop, a vape shop, a pound store, a charity shop, 3 empty units, and occasionally a Greggs. Among these modern relics, a single shop front stands as a hollow testament to what once was, a place where families once spent their Saturdays. The blank fascia above its door is more than just an empty sign. It represents the cumulative effect of countless misguided decisions made by individuals who never had to face the consequences. If you recall your own Saturdays on the high street, please share your memories in the comments. If this story resonates with someone you know, pass it along. And to help preserve these narratives, subscribe to the channel.